Hi, everybody. This is Lowell, and we're talking about basic sound system design. And today I wanted to talk to you about microphones. And so the concept is that your input source is most important. It's the foundation that the house is built on. And so, just as when you're building a house, if the dirt work is done poorly, if the slab is poured, not correctly, then you're going to have cracks in the foundation, cracks in the walls and the ceiling of the house. There are going to be different problems, and so your input source has to be right. If you know if that's not right, then the whole product will be messed up. So the choosing the right kind of microphone is very important, and there's generally two types of microphones, and there's everything in between these, but predominantly you have directional microphones, and then you have omnidirectional microphones, and one is um, a dynamic mic, and the other is condenser mic. And so when I talk about directional versus omnidirectional, um, if you're in a situation where you need to have sound rejection from your audience, or from like a noisy room, a lot of things are other things are going on, and you just only want to pick up the instrument, then you need to have a directional mic. Um, and those are usually used for miking drums, miking guitars, vocals. And so probably the most famous version of this, it's the same mic, it just has a different capsule on the top of it. But the Shure SM57 and 58. The 57 is made for miking instruments and amps and that type of thing, and SM58 is for vocals. You've seen the SM58. It looks like a ice cream cone, and it's very rugged. A lot of people really like it because you can take it on the road, and it'll withstand a lot of wear and tear. But that's a directional microphone. And so when I say directional, uh, there's a technical word called the polar pattern. And so essentially, the the area that the microphone is going to pick up is right here, and it's going to reject anything behind the microphone. And so that's really helpful if you're in a noisy environment. The other kind of microphone, and there's really basically two types of this one, is called a condenser mic. Um, and so the condenser a is omnidirectional, and the most people think of this type of mic as like a choir mic, and so you'll a lot of them will look kind of like just a stick, uh, like the Rode. Is it the M5? Yeah, that's a good contemporary version of what I'm talking about. This is more of a smaller diaphragm condenser, um, or smaller area that vibrates. And then you have these larger diaphragms, microphones like an AKG 440, and you see them in radio or podcasts. They're kind of boxy. That's a larger diaphragm condenser, and so a condenser functions differently. It's uh, the dynamic mic actually has a diaphragm inside there, a physical diaphragm that vibrates. But the condenser mic actually has plates that electrically vibrate against each other. Um, and the main difference, besides the polar pattern, so let me talk about the polar pattern here of these mics. So the polar pattern of this is very wide. It's going to pick up, everything around it. So there's no rejection. Uh, so if you have an audience, or if you have, there's very little rejection in a polar pattern like this. And so this kind of microphone, the condenser microphone, sounds really good. Um, it's very natural, and it works great in recording studios and in controlled acoustic spaces where you don't have a lot of noise, and You want to capture exactly the frequency range um, of a piano, say, or of string instruments or of a choir. You want it to sound not colored. The dynamic mic, on the other hand, does usually give more of a coloration of the sound, and so it causes there to be a little bit more of a warmth to the mid to lower frequencies, and so you want to choose, which microphone. Like if you try to use one of these microphones in a live setting, it's very likely that you're going to get feedback, unless you are very careful in terms of placement. Whereas the dynamic mics work much better in a live scenario. These are more the condenser mics are more studio based, um, but they can be used in live scenarios, and as well as dynamics can be used in studio. And so it's just about the kind of sound that you're looking for. We've with pop music, with modern pop music in studio history, there's a certain kind of tone that people are used to that they're trying to replicate, and it becomes an artistic decision more than, is it right or wrong. It's like, well, this is the kind of snare sound that I want, and I really want to use this dynamic mic on the snare, uh, right? Because it sounds a certain way. But there are considerations, in terms of practical use as well. So that's mainly what I wanted to share with you today. I might go a little bit more in depth in terms of what instruments and what scenarios use different types of miking. But the basic concept is: do you want it to be directional, or do you want it to be omnidirectional? Do you want it to be dynamic, which is a colored tone, or do you want it to be condenser, which is more of a natural flat frequency response?